My name is Jessica Perlman. I'm from Dellet Cohort 8, and I did my internship at South Area Solomon Schechter Day School in Norwood, Massachusetts. So my research question is, how can I maintain and regain the focus of my 4- and 5-year-old students? So at the end of January, I transitioned into a young kindergarten classroom. And almost immediately, I noticed that many of the students seemed to have difficulty staying focused during discussion. I saw some children, they moved their bodies, they were looking behind them, they were having side conversations, some children were playing with their jewelry. There was just, they seemed to have a really difficult time staying focused during these discussions. So as I continued watching my mentor and teaching my own lessons, I started wondering, what is going on when my students lose focus during discussion? And what teacher moves support students in maintaining focus? And what teacher moves effectively regroup students once they have lost their focus? So in order to answer my questions, I decided to start searching for my data. And I decided to observe my mentor teacher, Kathy, as well as another kindergarten teacher, Hillary, who taught in the adjoining classroom. And I watched them use these different techniques to maintain and regain focus during their lessons. So then I videotaped myself 6 times from March to May, and because I wanted to see what happened as I implemented these techniques into my own lessons. I also used 3 academic articles. One article is about fostering effective discussion and the different tactics you can use. The other article is about using positive reinforcements to improve behavior. And the third article is about the moves that teachers can use to really help students as they continue on in school. So I started observing my teachers in order to figure out how these teachers maintained and regained focus. I noticed that they used positive reinforcement. So for the kindergarten, my mentor, Kathy, she would say, "Oh, my heart is this big when you're singing so nicely." Another teacher would use a poem. She would start saying Old Mother Hubbard, and then all of the kids, they knew the poem and they would start saying that along with her, and that regained their focus. There was the movement, of course. Kathy says, "Put your hands on your head. If you can hear my voice, put your finger on your nose." And then both of these teachers encouraged student participation. So this looked, whether they were calling on the students or having the students each answer each other's questions, they were making sure that everybody was involved. I also noticed that both of the teachers seemed very engaged with the content. They were animated and enthusiastic at all times. So then I started incorporating the techniques into my own practice. So for instance, my positive reinforcements. "Oh, I love your listening body, that's fantastic." I started a clapping pattern, and the kids would follow along with that. That would regain their focus. We had, I did a unit on the senses, and we had a sensory song that the kids loved, and I used to start singing that, and that would regain their focus as well. I updated Jessica Says, so it wasn't just Jessica Says, put your hands on your head. It was Jessica Says, put your hands in the air and wiggle your fingers. I encouraged students to interact with each other during discussions. So if one of the students was having a problem, they could ask one of their friends, "Could you give me what do you think about this question?" So I wanted to see what had happened from my very first lesson that I recorded in March. I wanted to see what the difference is between the first lesson in March and the final lesson in May. And in order to analyze these videos, I was going back to the 3 articles that I read. I was looking for the different discussion tactics that I was using, as well as the positive reinforcement and teacher engagement moves that I was incorporating into these lessons. So for discussion tactics, I was looking to see if I was having the students use this space strategically. So were they sitting in a circle? Were they looking at one another? Were they using eye contact? Was I asking the children good questions, and was I calling on individual students? I was looking to see if I was naming the appropriate and expected behavior. So I'm calling on Sam because he's raising his hand right now, and using verbal praise as well. I was also looking to see if I was using different tones of voice. So if I would start talking like this, but then turn it into a whisper. use hand gestures and movements. That's important. That keeps them interested as well as incorporating interest and enthusiasm. If they can see that I'm excited about this content, they're going to be as well. So in analyzing the lessons, I found that from the very first lesson in March, most of my students were not paying attention or participating. I was consistently calling on 4 of the same students, and those students were the ones raising their hands. It was a very long discussion, and there were no visuals. And I'm upset to say, I did not appear engaged in this lesson at all. So for the final lesson in May, I was engaged and enthusiastic. I was humorous, I had a little bit of playfulness. I used lots of facial expressions, lots of smiles, big eyes, hand movements. My voice went from whispers to really excited tones. I called on 8 out of 9 of the students. I did incorporate visuals. The discussion was not very long at all. We were on the rug, I think, for about 13 minutes. Had the students answer each other's questions, so this is a really cute story. One of the little boys in my class was convinced that a shark could in fact live in the Dead Sea, when nothing can live in the Dead Sea because it's too salty. So he was so sure that this was true, so I had him ask his friends, well, what do you guys think about this? So they were all able to talk about this together, and answer each other's questions. I included a new movement in Jessica Says. So at one point, we were looking at pictures, and the kids, they got really excited. So I was trying to refocus them and quiet them down. So I said, Jessica Says, put your lips together like this. And they did it, and I got a couple of little giggles as well. I have to say also, what I noticed, here, I started in this classroom in January, so here I come in May now. I'm comfortable. I really had developed my teacher stance, and I think that that also played a big role in the development of this lesson. And as you can see from my comparison chart, the number of positive reinforcement and discussion tactics and teacher engagement moves that I used increased from increased in the second lesson. So the significance of my findings. Students were engaged in the discussion when I was engaged. I noticed that their eyes were always on me. Their eyes were on each other. We were all engaged in this conversation together. Students responded to positive reinforcement. I had one student who, when we were singing one of our songs, he started to get a little silly. And I said to him, I know you know the right words of the song, and I love when you sing the song the right way. And he immediately started singing correctly. Again, incorporating new refocusing techniques are always really helpful. Keeps the kids on their toes. Again, have to keep them actively participating, call on them, have them call on one another, keep everyone engaged in the discussion. Visuals are so important, and discussion should not last more than 20 minutes. So in conclusion, how can teachers maintain and regain focus of 4- and 5-year-old students during group discussion? Students should be actively participating. Positive reinforcement, songs, poems, and movement can regain focus during discussion. And finally, teachers should demonstrate engagement, interest, and excitement about the content.